Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here to talk about Islam and the Reformation and Unitarianism, or the infiltration, the encroachment of Islamic ideas into Europe, into the Reformation. Did the Muslims, did the Ottomans hijack the Reformation? Did they seed the Reformation and then hijack it? And also, we want to start examining the collaboration, the collusion. Think World War II. Think the French collaborators working with the Germans. Was there an element of that? Was there a lot going on that didn't get covered in your history class? That wasn't covered in Sunday school? Didn't get mentioned when you were at university? Was there a bit of history that, I don't know, shows guilt or crimes on a national scale that Protestants committed that somehow got overlooked? Well, I'm hoping we can look at the historical evidence and we'll be able to form conclusions on that basis. So yeah, sorry, I just woke up. I was exhausted. I fell asleep for about 45 minutes and I realized I was sharing my screen. So yeah, hello everyone. And it's exhausting doing this kind of stuff, all this research, the nights, the mornings, but hello. So we've got Ignatius, looking forward. I hope your test went well. Let me know how it went later. Just Janice, here we go again, she says, and she says, let's hope I am smiling at the end. I'm still smiling, Janice. So if me, who's at the forefront of this, at the bleeding edge, if I can smile, so can you, because the alternative is to cry, and I don't want to see you crying. So let's keep on smiling. The masochism does continue, and it's Villainous in the house. Very welcome. Good to see you. We've got Archambault de Saint-Amand. Welcome. H.M. Fogg says, Shalom, good people. We have D. Milaman. And great. Oh, and thank you very much. So yeah, we've got Century Sense who tells me the audio is better. I see that I messed up my audio. I was playing around with the audio a few days ago, some time back. And yeah, my audio should be much better now. So thank you for letting me know, Century Sense, about the audio issue, and thank you so that I could fix it. Was Luther in a South France monastery in 1515? I don't know, but I will get to the south of France. Now, Mal has spoken about the south of France. And yes, from what I can tell, things were happening in the south of France. Some very odd things were happening in the south of France. Things that certainly involved Islam. So that's definitely something. Maybe I'll call Mal about that and we can set up a talk. But first, I've got to prep my notes on that. So great, Ignatius. I'm glad your exam went well. So guys, thank you all for being here. And if you do, of course, like the material that I put out, the very contentious, very difficult material that basically fries, cooks, and eats a lot of sacred cows, then please do like the episode, like all the episodes. Share the material, tell your friends about it, talk about it, use it on social media. Take screenshots, share it on X, and tell the other YouTubers that you mod for or watch about this material. And of course, again, always thank you for the support that I receive for the channel. I'm always grateful for it. And by the way, I'd like to say that pretty soon I'll be able to retire from YouTube. A kind YouTube sponsor sent me $50 million Zimbabwe. So on that basis, I think that so basically, as soon as I can get to a bank, I'm going to cash this, and your dreams can come true on YouTube. So thank you. Century Sin says Lloyd should open a barbecue restaurant called Grilled Sacred Cows. Villainous asks, are Cathars exiled Muslims from Spain? Crazy question. That's an interesting question. The thing is, keep throwing the questions out, because you'd be amazed when you start asking crazy questions and you start looking. You sometimes your subconscious is picking up something, maybe not phrasing it really well, but it's picking up something. And when you look, you start to find things that do make sense. So interesting. That, it's an odd question, but it's kind of, yeah. There's something to the idea behind the question. That's just 5 cents. Like, what do you mean? It's just it's $50 million. What do you mean Great. Are you saying that my dream of retiring from my YouTube money is now shattered? Wilderness, thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm having a small problem. Morris Travis, hello there, and Ignatius. So, yeah, Eva, yeah, I did cover that on the monotheism series. So have a look into that on monotheism. So anyway, here I've got my yellow liquid. Let me take a sip because you need this stuff to survive these things. There we go. And let's jump into this talk. And of course, we'll have 5 billion rands inside. Yeah. Yes. You're stuck with us here. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, yeah, there is. Yeah, separate old Catholics. That's okay. Well, let's dive into this whole thing. So thanks for being here. Do let me know your questions, your comments in the chat, as well as the comments later. Let me know what you think, what thoughts you come up with, what parallels you see. Because to be quite honest, what I'm going to show you is a summary of the history. It is 100th, 1,000th of the actual historical record. It's a tiny fraction of what there is that proves alliances, collusion, and just cooperation with the Protestants, with the Muslims, treating each other like pals, treating each other as allies to destroy the Catholic civilization that had been part of Europe for those 1,500 years, to destroy everything Catholic, and to show an insane level of cooperation, collaboration, and arming each other, weapons. And in fact, what we find is, without having the time to go into it in this episode or in this series, but the English became a sea power because of their collaboration with the Muslims, with the Turks. So because they got given exclusive trading rights by the Turks to trade into North Africa with the Turks, they made a lot of money. And then, of course, they expanded their navy, their merchant navy, but they also needed to expand their military navy to protect their ships. And they became very wealthy, and they became a supreme sea power by selling out the Catholics and collaborating with the Turks. And I would assume so with the Dutch. So this is how they became sea powers. So, yeah, there's a lot of odd history, things that somehow I never got taught when I was at school. So let's talk about this. Now, I just spoke about this yesterday, the Ottoman Empire and the early modern Europe. So the Ottoman government was aware of the Reformation. My question is, how much did they do to create the Reformation, to develop this thing, to incubate it, and then exploit it? So let's continue. Let's look at Jean Bodin as an example. I've covered some other people in the past. In my Luther episode, I covered a different royal ambassador or minister who was with the Turks, and they all have this very favorable view of the Turks, but they're also like, yeah, we're never going to win the war, just let the Turks win, just roll over, play dead, and and be nice, and they'll use Vaseline. That's the basic view. So Martin Luther argues that the fight against the Turks should be secular, not a crusade. Because why? He is praising their tolerance of diverse religions, because Islam is so tolerant of other religions, we therefore should not have a crusade against them. So let them, the great emperor of the Turks, he permits every man to live according to his conscience, because that was simply strategic tolerance practiced by the Turks. This is not them employing Sharia strictly. So what goes on here? So this is Jean Bodin and the rise of absolutist theory. Now that's kind of interesting. That's from Cambridge University Press. This man used to be a constitutionalist, and then the man spends a lot of time among the Turks, and suddenly he develops this idea of the absolute monarch who wields both political power and religious authority. Very interesting. We know that as the caliph, which is taken from Islamic scriptures. You'll find that I've covered that in the past, but yeah, we'll get into that. So Jean Bodin, French jurist, always the lawyers, like a certain French lawyer called Calvin, and he was a political philosopher. He was a member of the Parliament of Paris and a professor of law in Toulouse. Great start for being someone who can understand the Sharia. Towards the end of his life, he wrote a dialogue amongst different religions, including representatives of Judaism, Islam, and natural theology, in which all agreed to coexist. Can't we all just get along? Jean Bodin was successfully a friar, an academic, a professional lawyer, and a political advisor. So there was the theory of royal absolutism systematically developed by Bodin, moving away from his earlier constitutional stance. Bodin's absolutism was unprecedented. This was an unexpected shift in his thinking, in his ideas. So before the 1570s, the mainstream of the French tradition had been constitutionalist, and much of the absolutist doctrine of the 17th century was either based on Bodin's theory or similar assumptions. And where did he get these ideas? It's going to be a complete mystery. So Bodin's absolutism, while framed in Western terms, obviously with Western characteristics, could very well mask Islamic influence. For instance, Ottoman government models. Bodin's shift to absolutism in the Republic, 1576, doesn't explicitly cite Islamic sources, but his exposure to Ottoman centralized rule via Polish envoys in 1573, and his praise for monotheism. Oh boy, he suddenly developed a praise for monotheism. In his colloquium, Heptaplomeres suggests a discrete influence from the Islamic Khilafah. So now look, I'm not going to go into length. There's a lot to be said about this guy. I had to just capture a few details to summarize. But we do know, and we will see, that Islamic ideas infiltrated European thought heavily, undermining Christian orthodoxy. So I thought Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. So was Calvin inverting that? That's a fair point. That's a good thought. That is a very interesting thought. Trust me, bro. Yep. Yes, Catherine, always. Hey, Mr. De Jong, I saw your video with Reliance of the Traveler, 65.4 and Sharia law. It is insane. Keep up the good work. Yeah, thank you, man. Coming across that material. Yeah, very disturbing. Who fed Luther that? Well, Luther was very well fed. What he was eating, well, the history tells us he did enjoy, apparently, according to his biographers, meals made from pig poo and horse poo. I didn't make that up. That's written in the biography. So I think any guy who eats pig shit is probably fucking crazy. But that's just me. I'm just picky like that. So we'll come back to Mr. Bodin in a little bit, but Ottoman strategic tolerance. So the Huguenots, some Anglicans, Quakers, Anabaptists, Jesuits, Capuchins moved to Istanbul in the Ottoman Empire, right? They were given right to residence and worship, and they supported the Calvinists in Transylvania and Hungary, but also in France, which was a strategic move to weaken the Catholic Habsburg dominance and also foster religious dissent. Now, what ideas are these people absorbing and taking back with them? Because they were so impressed with the Ottomans. They were so impressed with their governance. Yes, just Janice, you heard that right. You definitely heard that 100% correctly. That's exactly what I said. Yes, you didn't make a mistake. So, moving on. So, French thinker Jean Bodin. Yes, villainous. Now, I don't know why his biographers, who are both Protestants, would write that, but I'm assuming they're telling the truth. I don't know, and these are not Catholics. These are very highly qualified Protestants. So disgusting, I know, but but Luther is a great theologian, great man. So French thinker Jean Bodin. lived from 1530 to 1596, wrote, "The great emperor of the Turks does with as great devotion as any prince in the world honor and observe the religion by him received from his ancestors. And yet he detests not the strange religions of others, but on the contrary, he permits every man to live according to his conscience." It's like, yeah, Islam is so tolerant. Gee whiz. And yes, and that more is, near unto his palace at Pera, he suffers 4 diverse religions, that of the Jews, that of the Christians, that of the Greeks, and that of the Mohammedans. That's in Daniel Goffman, The Ottoman Empire and Early Modern Europe. Martin Luther, in his 1528 pamphlet on war against the Turks, calls for the Germans to resist the Ottoman invasion of Europe as the catastrophic surge of Vienna was lurking. Now, of course, he also said, don't resist, and he said, resist. Then he said, don't do anything, and, resist ye not evil, because that's what you need to do. So Martin Luther's message was all over the place. But he expressed views of Islam, which, compared to his aggressive speech against Catholicism, are very mild. Daniel Goffman, for instance, he would say, those Jews are disgusting, the sons of the devil, Satan's own those Jews. And then for Jews, the Muslims hate Jesus, they blaspheme Jesus, they're very bad. Tell me, guys, what's really important, and then let's talk about this now at length. How are we going to screw over the Catholics? That was Martin Luther's works, if you will. That was Martin Luther's discussion on Islam. Islam's very bad, but guys, really, we gotta. How are we gonna screw over the Catholics? That was, as far as I can tell, that's Martin Luther's discussion on Islam. So Luther wrote, "Let the Turk believe and live as he will. Live and let live. Why can't we all just get along? Why are you so aggressive? Why are you fighting? You Islamophobe, you." So, just as one lets the papacy and other false Christians live, because Muslims bad, but look, you know what? Let's just get along with them. And how do we screw over the Catholics? That was Martin Luther's message in a nutshell. And that's except from On War Against the Turk, 1529, Miller, Rowland, Muslims, and the Gospel, Bridging the Gap, a reflection on Christian sharing. So that's just someone else quoting this, but you can see it in Luther's works, right? Christians have been stirred up to take up the sword and fight the Turk when they ought to have been fighting the devil with unbelief with the word and with prayer. Why are you guys fighting the Muslims? Why are you trying to push these invaders out of your country? What's wrong with you? They're Muslims. They're, you should be at home praying for because you deserve it. You're guilty because this is God's wrath. You evil white Christians. That was Martin Luther's message. You mean vindictiveness is not Christian? Not according to Martin Luther, though. It's to be vindictive against Catholics and Jews that's what Jesus wants. So, so Catherine says syphilis and toxoplasmosis parasites cause a condition to make the sufferer attracted to urine and feces, usually cat excrement infection. Do you know what is crazy? When you read his biographers, or when you read modern histories of Luther, there's a comment, and I have researched, and I don't have access to this because these were newly unearthed things, relatively recently unearthed things that are only accessible to historians who can get access to the records. They're not public. But there's a reference. I've covered this. I've shown this already on my talks on Luther. They kept mentioning that the Luther family would routinely have dead cats in their garbage. It's just a throwaway line mentioned by this historian, very well-respected historian, writes very well as far as I can see, researches very well, says no, they would have these dead cats in their garbage every week. And I have to ask, how many dead cats do you throw away into your garbage every week? Now, personally, I don't do more than one roughly every 2,000 or 3,000 years. So I've still got a little while I haven't been around that long. I've still got some time to go before I start throwing away my first dead cat. But the Luther family apparently routinely throw away cats in their garbage. Maybe it wasn't a Monday morning after their Sunday night satanic ritual with the dead cat. I don't know. Maybe he was Maybe he was hungry. I don't know, but this is very odd. Understand? I agree, Janice. It is very weird. You're starting to sound Catholic more and more. I don't know if I can still trust you. That's my upbringing did not teach me how to deal with comments like that. I'm just a guy on YouTube. End stage syphilis is advanced parasitical brain disease. I wouldn't put past Luther. Nothing wrong with praying for Muslims. We all need to. That's different to rolling over to those intent on butchering your neighbors. And I 100% agree with you, Villainous. And the fact that a man who lived 500 years ago still has secret records is a bit too much of a giveaway. I would agree. I'm getting Lutheranophobic. Oh my, Sandro, no. That's. You need his medical records. Medical forensics solves a lot of mysteries. Yeah, the man was a very sickly man. He had lots of infection, and there's some weird things. I mean, there's some weird things going on with that guy. So, welcome, Sandro. Good to see you, man. Didn't Darwin have extra bins for that? Yeah, Darwin also had some weird stuff going on. Did Luther invent the phrase, there's more than one way to skin a cat? This is Martin Luther. No, but Martin Luther crops up here. This is not specifically about him, but let's just say the historical record of Martin Luther and the narrative on Martin Luther, the public one, they're a little different from each other. The Sentinel says, I think Martin Luther had several mental illnesses. I fully agree. And he had a mood disorder, definitely a little OCD. How do you study religions without concluding that they're all made up with no supernatural elements? Well, when you're an atheist and you start with a preconceived notion that there is nothing beyond the physical, then of course you'll come to that conclusion because your worldview by default excludes the things that you claim that you're looking for, which is actually just incoherent and obviously dishonest. And then, of course, if if you're an atheist who doesn't believe in things but actually is an anti-Christian, then that also makes good sense. When you follow pagan ideas, because Christianity is actually because atheism is actually just rehashed paganism and the basis for socialism, communism, and the genocides of the socialist 20th century, then you're going to have to overlook your the religious the religious aspects of it, of course, because atheism was for centuries called a religion, and now, of course, you have to deny it. So there's lots of so if you just overlook all of the issues with atheism, of course, you can come to those conclusions. It's not a problem because you do presuppose it. And you're pushing the right buttons. Yes, of course. So let's go on. So are we looking at Ottoman theological sabotage? So the Ottoman orchestrated theological sabotage, right? The idea. The Ottomans deliberately seeded anti-Trinitarian ideas through the Morisco intermediaries. Now, of course, you go through the historical record and it goes, no, these Moriscos were harmless. Yeah, but maybe we'll find out not so much. And to radicalize the Protestant dissent, and they aimed to erode Catholic orthodoxy. Travis, I think you're a troll who's simply here to take us off topic. You see, because atheists also make up their own ideas, they make up their own religions, because atheism is a religion. In fact, in the US, the atheists fought very hard, all the way to the Supreme Court, to be a religion, to be regarded as a religion, to be recognized as a religion, until they realized it was a mistake. And in the 80s, they had to change their propaganda, because also it happens to be the same political system that is responsible for hundreds of millions of murders in the 20th century, because it is a violent, genocidal, irrational ideology. You can see that in my series on socialism and atheism. So, of course, when you're guilty about all of your murders, you're going to have to attack everyone else. Muslims attack Christianity because they want to take attention away from the genocidal, immoral, sick nature of Islam, and atheists do the very same because they want to take attention away from the genocidal, absolutely sick, immoral history of atheism. So anywho, let me go and deal with something. So anyway, moving on. So, atheists are ahistorically illiterate, honestly. Hold on, let me just do something. You may be a troll, and yes, because this has nothing to do with you. This is I'm going to be nice. I'm going to put you in time up to 24 hours. So have a nice day. try the Islamic recommendation, have some camel urine and enjoy the day or something. But really, we're here on a different topic. You're obviously trying to, because of your pride and narcissism, perhaps, you want us to now start focusing just on you and your little needs. And I've got something to do here that doesn't involve you. Yes, atheists are historically illiterate, incredibly so. Have a look at my series on atheism. You'll find that atheism is religion. You're just a religious zealot, like all atheists are, in denial about the fact that atheism, if you look at the very first atheist state, it was a genocidal, irrational, occultic mess. It's called the French Revolution. It was the first attempt at literally using murder as a way to cleanse the earth of religion. And of course, yeah, atheists are in denial about all of this. So moving on. Yes, exactly. Yep. 200 million people killed by atheists in the 20th century alone. Atheists are a bunch of ahistorical, immoral fools. Okay, so you've got these Moriscos seeding ideas. So they're trying to radicalize Protestant dissent, or maybe seed it as well, and then radicalize it. So they want to erode Catholic orthodoxy and align Christianity with Islamic monotheism. Now, this idea has a basis, but we don't have direct evidence. We don't have a confession, and it's going to be almost impossible to get such a confession. Also, when you look through the history, what you find is in the records, most of the records are in Arab and Ottoman sources. You're going to find Islamic sources in Istanbul that talk about this, Muslim scholars that write about this. You don't find Western scholars writing about it. And it seems to be erased from Western European history, Dutch history, English history, totally erased, missing. So you've got, there's lax, shall we say, lax confession, but you can find lots of coordination, okay? But it matches the intent of Islam and the Muslims. Then you find Protestant complicity in Islamic alignment. So the idea is that the Protestant leaders with Ottoman support embraced deviant ideas to gain political leverage against Catholics and advance an Islamified Christianity in the process. So the basis. So Luther's praise for Turkish discipline, right? And other praise for how they're, how Jesus doesn't just look as nice as these Muslims do. These Muslims just look so clean and awesome and religious, and Jesus looks a little tatty by comparison, and so do the apostles. And yeah, we just don't match up to those Muslims now, do we? Yeah, so lots of praise there from Luther. You have the Transylvanian Calvinists, the acceptance of the Ottoman-backed Unitarian tolerance. Then it shows that the Protestants valued strategic gains, money, over doctrinal purity. Then you have Servetus quoting the Quran as evidence for his religious ideas against Christianity. And then it shows you the Reformation was very open to Islamic thought. And then playing devil's advocate, the Protestants prioritized Catholic destruction over being aligned with the Muslims, right? Because the on war against the Turk really just becomes an anti-Catholic screed. And sola scriptura, as we will find, stems from the concept of a clear Quran. So the reason that we have the Bible alone is because Muslims have the Quran alone. You have one single authoritative book. And, we only need this book. We only need this Bible. It's because it's a clear Bible because it's a clear Quran. They were taking ideas from the Muslims. You'll find that idea starts in at least one verse, like Quran 16:89. Clear Quran, thus clear Bible. So collusion was politically pragmatic and ideological. Oh, yeah, no, Luther, you have no idea what the kind of things Luther was saying, right? Let me see. So, yep, no, the atheism series, it's very disturbing how evil and diabolical the atheists and Freemasons were. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, no, the atheists are idiots. I mean, seriously, atheists are just historically illiterate. It's actually shocking how bad. Yeah, they remove the history. Yes, and that is true. Okay, so moving on. Then you have ideological convergence in politics. The Moriscos as Ottoman theological agents. Now, of course, if you read these history, you'll say, no, they were just minding their own business. Not true. So the Moriscos, post-expulsion, become Ottoman agents in Europe. And they have a Christian facade that they hold up to infiltrate Protestant circles and then promote anti-Trinitarianism. Playing devil's advocate, there are no records that confirm the Moriscos as Ottoman spies, but we'll come to records that do exist saying, because for instance, there's a few records where the Protestants go, hey, Mr. Muslim Emperor, we want to go and destroy the Spanish. We want to wipe them out. Can you help out? And the guy says, sure, I'll send you an army, I'll send you a navy, I'll send you money, I'll send you intelligence. And by the way, go talk to the Moriscos and see what help they can give you. Go talk to those fake Christians who are actually Muslims in disguise, these crypto Muslims, and see how they can help you. And that's written in the words of the emperor. So I guess that's kind of a confession. So anyway, you get given the link with Servetus, right? The Moriscos could have been vectors for Islamic influence. And it turns out, yes, they were. Right. You have cultural osmosis by Ottoman diplomacy and Ottoman dominance, and we're going to see a lot of that. So now this is based on, if you do a standard search, the standard narrative generally brings up these very conservative answers. Ottoman diplomats and merchants embedded in Europe promote monotheism through cultural exchange. Yes, they did. Influencing reformers to adopt Islam-compatible Christianity and theology without overt collusion. So Ottoman ambassadors and trade networks exposed Europeans to Islamic ideas. You see Sale's 1734 Quran and Voltaire, all of them speaking very favorably of Muhammad. And Unitarianism in Ottoman-influenced Transylvania shows there was cultural seepage. Then you have Servetus praising Muhammad, Luther admiring the Turks, and others like this guy Ogier suggesting ideological openness to Islam. Now, a couple of works that were very popular and that showed that Islamic works and thinking was definitely infiltrating Western society. Well, let me just see if I've missed anything here. So, right, okay. So, medical text. You have Liber Pantegni by Ali ibn Abbas al-Majusi, translated by Constantine the African, comprehensive medical encyclopedia. There were Latin translations as early as the 12th century. The Canon of Medicine, Avicenna, translated by Gerard of Cremona, standard medical text in European universities. Philosophical text, Aristotle's works, preserved and commented upon by Islamic scholars like Avicenna and Averroes, Ibn Rushd, translated, and they influenced scholastic thought. You had Latin translations as early as the 12th century. Mathematical text, algebra, Al-Khwarizmi, translated by Robert of Chester. He introduces systematic algebraic methods to Europe. Latin translations as early as 12th century. The Book of Optics by Ibn al-Haytham, translated by Gerard of Cremona, influences European optics and scientific methodology. You have religious and theological texts. The Quran, translated into Latin, 1143 by Robert of Ketton, commissioned by Peter the Venerable, used for polemical purposes often, but also introduces Islamic theology. Latin translations, 12th century. This was read by Servetus, who used it to support his arguments for his anti-Trinitarian Christianity. Occult works, the Picatrix, Hayat al-Hakim, 10th century Arabic text on magic and astrology. Translated into Latin, 13th century, influences European occultism. Astrological texts by al-Biruni were also translated, so blending Islamic esoteric traditions with European thought. There were not only translations of Greek texts, but also original Islamic contributions. And then these Islamic scholars would also comment on other texts. So they were introducing new ideas, new perspectives to Westerners. Okay, so now, Islam and the European Reformation in the New Arab. Early Protestant thinkers were obsessed with Islam, as the Reformation broke down barriers between Christian and Muslim nations. The Reformation broke down barriers between Christian and Muslim nations. Okay, yeah, because I don't know why. So the collusion, lieber Turks dan Paps. Now, this says rather Turkish than papist. Now, of course, this is typically translated, and I believe deceptively mistranslated as, yeah, we'd rather have Turkish rule than Catholic rule. Well, those are two separate domains. The Turks, that is a government, whereas the Pope is a religious figure. So this is not the same. Talking civil government versus religious order. So these are two separate domains. What it really means is we would rather be Turkish, because the word papist in Europe was commonly a pseudonym for Catholic. So rather Muslim than Catholic. This was a phrase very common in Dutch, very common in Holland. So it really says we would rather be Muslims than Catholic. And maybe you should just sometimes take people at their word. So Ottoman Muslim tolerance was a consistent theme in Protestant writings. They praised these Ottomans, how tolerant they were from the period. So this was contrasted with Catholic Spain's intolerance towards the movement. And I can see why they wouldn't, because the Spanish had already dealt with an Islamic invasion, and it had taken them 700 years to kick them back out. The Ottomans viewed the Protestants favorably. Sultan Suleiman, from 1494 to 1566, wrote an open letter to the Lutherans of Flanders in which he declared his closeness to them. He said, hey, you guys are my homies. And he said, since they did not worship idols like those Catholics, they believed in one God, unlike those evil Catholics, and they fought against the Pope and the Emperor. So because they didn't worship idols, you guys are my semi-Muslim homies. That was from the Emperor. Now, personally, I'm not sure that Christians should be regarded as, in their theology, as just like the Muslims, because Muslims say that all the time, and I'm sure Christians are like, what are you guys talking about? Jesus was a Muslim? Really? But apparently to these Christians, yeah, this was just awesome. Yeah, we don't want to be like those Catholics. We don't want Trinity and stuff like that. We want to be more like the Muslims because Muhammad is our main man or something. So Villena says, as an aside from Islamic influence, an example could be Vlad the Impaler, who learned from the Turks and he was in captivity there. Yeah, two of his sons, his brothers, were taken as tribute, taken as hostages to force concessions from them. Yeah, he went through hell. And he was like, yeah. So, but 1134 Quran Latin, that's a possibility. That's a start. Yeah, Muhammad was illiterate. Well, the Jews means he didn't know the Bible or Torah, not that he could not read. Yeah, there's a good chance he could read. Okay, so let me see if I'm missing any important comments. Yeah, no, the atheists were evil. I mean, they were brutally evil. I mean, it is brutally evil what the atheists were doing. Okay, let me continue. So the Ottomans were very favorable towards the Protestants because you guys don't worship idols. You guys believe in one God and you fight against the Pope and the Emperor. I need you guys to destroy the European, I need you to destroy the current powers in Europe so that we Ottomans and you guys can live side by side and sing Kumbaya in tolerance. That's what we're going to do because we're Muslims. Okay. And then the French Protestant preacher, we get back to Jean Bodin. He wrote glowingly about his time in the Ottoman Empire. And then apparently Martin Luther says, and I could not find this quote, but it's a very popular quote, a smart Turk, a smart Muslim makes a better ruler than a dumb Christian. Because yeah, we'd rather have a Turkish Muslim emperor in Europe than that Pope, the evil, satanic, vile Pope. We can't have this Pope, this Christian Pope. We can't have these fake Christian. We need to have these Muslims run the show because that'll be better for us. And that's Martin Luther. That's a sentiment that has become. That was the sentiment that is understood. Now, apparently, this quote is apocryphal. I couldn't find this quote in Luther's works, but it is very commonly quoted. As you can see in this textbook here, it is very commonly quoted as something Luther said. So this was the general sentiment. Whatever else Luther might have said, maybe he said the exact opposite. That got forgotten. As far as people are concerned, Luther was like, yeah, let's go, Islam. Let's go, Islam for the win. That was the general perception. Luther told his contemporaries to see the good in the Turks and refers to those favorable to the Ottoman Empire, as I mentioned. And some want the Turk to come and rule because they think our German people are wild and uncivilized. And Luther also called the German people wild and uncivilized. They deserved Turkish rule, you see, because you white people are just it's, whiteness is a problem, but the Turks are going to solve that. And indeed, they are half devil and half man. Yeah, Luther wasn't very fond of his own people. That's Martin Luther, Luther's works. Right, then the Ottomans also felt closer to the Protestants than to the Catholics. Suleiman the Magnificent sent a letter to the Lutherans. Sorry, I'm just repeating that. And then, of course, you've got exchanges between Elizabeth I of England and Sultan Murad III. In one letter, Murad entertains the notion that Islam and Protestantism had much more in common than it did with Catholicism. He says, you Protestants and us, we have a lot in common. You guys are just like us Muslims. We guys are like homies, and those Catholics, yeah, we're not like those Catholics, right? Our religions are so similar, as both rejected the worship of idols, and he argued for an alliance between England and the Ottoman Empire. And of course, what Elizabeth did was say, yeah, sure, anytime, just where do we sign? So that's in Karen Ordal Cooperman, the Jamestown Project, blah, blah, it's a book. Okay, let's have a look. The Ottoman state and its place in world history. I mean, villainous, or maybe they just meant what they said. Maybe it's general propaganda, and maybe they were just being very serious, right? Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Okay, so, oh no, the cahoots thing. So the cahoots thing, Eva, the cahoots thing. Oh, it's gonna get worse. Believe me, I'm only going to be showing you like a tenth of 1% of the actual collusion. They were colluding. There was some serious collusion, and you're going to see there was a lot of it. I can only show you a small insight into it. Believe me, these people were up to their necks in it. They were collaborating. So the Turkish impact on the development of modern Europe in the Ottoman state and its place in world history. In the 16th and 17th centuries, support for Protestants and Calvinists was one of the fundamental principles of Ottoman policy in Europe. In 1552, Suleiman tried to incite the Protestant princes in Germany against the Pope and the Emperor. He said in a letter that he was about to embark on a campaign, and he promised on oath that they would not be harmed when he entered Germany. Because you guys are my homies, you Protestants. We both are on the same side. We're all friends. And Melanchthon, that is Martin Luther's right-hand man, was directly in touch with the patriarch of Istanbul, who was in effect an official of the Sultan. In a letter to the Lutheran princes in the Low Countries and other lands subject to Spain, the Sultan offered military help. He said, hey, do you guys want some Muslim soldiers and money and weapons and to help you? And you see, he saw them as standing close to him, since they did not worship idols, believed in God, and fought against the Pope and the Emperor. Under Ottoman rule, Calvinism was propagated freely because you guys have the same theology in many ways. Free will, predestination, it's like you may as well be Muslims. And this was in Hungary and Transylvania, which became a Calvinist and Unitarian stronghold. Now, that's just sheer coincidence, I am sure. It is convincingly argued that Ottoman pressure on the Habsburgs, that's Ottoman pressure on the Catholics, was an important factor in the extension of Protestantism in Europe. And you'll find, as you go through, it was coordinated. The Protestants and the Muslims were coordinating to make sure they could undermine the Catholics. As it should be pointed out, the Ottomans also contributed to the rise of Moscow. Good grief, the Ottomans contributed to the rise of the Russians by supporting as a great power in the politics of Eastern Europe, the Muscovy-Crimean alliance against Eastern Europe. Great stuff. So they helped the Russians. Fantastic. Really good. The Turkish Muslim strategy. So this is from a document here. Now, let me show you this document. This is something I'm going to drop in the chat. I got sent this yesterday by someone. This is an amazing work. You need to look at this. This is frightening. This is incredibly frightening. It's European History Online, the Christian Allies of the Ottoman Empire. And when you read this, you would be shocked just how much collaboration, collusion with the enemy there was by Protestants. And everyone's going to go, no, but the Catholics are evil and the Jews are evil. And you guys like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're just a propagandist. Shut up and sit down. Because when you start looking at the actual history, the records, the collaboration, how the navy of the Sultan was professionally crewed by Christians, Protestants who went over to help to invade Europe. I mean, this is treason. This is betrayal of Europe. This is betrayal of Christendom on a shocking scale. And this is not spoken about. And like, you're like, this is absolutely disgusting. But yeah, you really need to look at this. You need to go through this document. Christians in the service of the Ottomans. Yeah, some of these people this is a very long document. Oh man, it is shocking to read. Ottoman alliances with the Christian states. So yeah, we're going to talk about Othello in a moment. So let me see if I've missed anything. Okay, documents in the Ottoman archives concerning information gathering, military provisioning, and strategic planning show how careful the Ottomans were when it came to assessing the capabilities and logistic impediments, as well as the possible benefits of military action. That's in the document I just showed you. That's in the section called Christian Allies of the Ottoman Empire by Emrah Safa Gurkan. And that's in the section Ottoman Alliances, right? of the Christian states. So the Ottomans weren't interested in making all-out war because there were practical limitations. So instead of making war, they would make assessments, and what they would do is they would use spies, they would use persuasion, they'd use diplomacy to get their way. So war was used very strategically, very carefully, right? So let's continue. Let's have a look. The method of influence, right? And thanks to one of my subscribers who mentioned, right? Oh, no, it's a novel. No, it's a very long, and it's a summary. I read like half of it yesterday. It's a very long doc. So method of influence, okay? Military pressure on the Habsburgs, diplomatic alliances with Protestants, tolerance in Ottoman-controlled lands, ideological utility, right? Naval rivalry with Catholic powers, espionage and information networks, and support of Protestant rulers. You have Central Europe, Hungary, England, the Dutch Republic, Hungary, Transylvania, the Balkans, Germany, the Mediterranean, Italy, Spain, Venice, Central Europe, Transylvania. You're looking at the 1500s and the 1600s. So you're looking at like 1500s, call it 1515 to about 1650. These guys are going wild, all right? They diverted Habsburg troops from suppressing Protestantism, right? So the military pressure they applied was to prevent the Catholics from dealing with the Protestants, which means the Catholics are fighting on two fronts, so they had to make concessions. And then, of course, these concessions were exploited by the Protestants, but also the military pressure allowed these Turks to almost take over Europe completely. The Ottoman campaigns like the Siege of Vienna distracted Charles V from Lutheran conflicts. And of course, when they were tied up with the Turks, then the Protestants would go forward, and vice versa. They were playing a game. They weakened Catholic dominance in diplomacy. Right? Sultan Murad maintained correspondence with Elizabeth, enabling English trade and diplomacy, which made England wealthy. It made England a major naval and trading power. Oh my gosh, Christine, thank you very much. Wow, thank you. She donated $10 through Super Chat, and she says, thank you very much. And we were never taught any of this. Christine, neither was I. And yes, and when you look at the sheer volume of historical data on this, and it points only in one direction. It points only in one direction. It is shocking. And the conclusion is quite obvious. Just thought of a modern example, says Villainous. The president of France just hosted the new president of Syria. Yet his cities are full of jihadists. Yeah, this is going on today. It's a 500-year-old problem. Then, of course, Protestantism flourished under Ottoman influence because it was an incubator. Of course, they were incubating this thing. Protestantism was tolerated or indirectly protected. Reformers framed Ottoman threat as divine punishment. Luther described the Ottomans as instruments of divine punishment for Catholic corruption. So, yeah, and which means he personally weakened the response against the Ottomans. For several years, he didn't call for a pushback. He said, no, we just got to roll over and play dead because you guys deserve it, you nasty, dirty white people. Weakened Catholic maritime power, enabling Protestant expansion. Naval battles against Spain and Venice reduced Catholic control in the Mediterranean because they could all make a little bit of money. In fact, a lot of money. They made millions. They used Protestant informants in Catholic courts. Interesting. Protestant dragomans served as Ottoman informants in European courts. Spies, in other words. And they backed Calvinist leaders to resist the Habsburgs. So there was a lot going on. It wasn't just warfare. This was a multi-pronged attack. This was very well thought through. Economic, military, diplomatic, social, religious. These guys were organized. This wasn't an accident. So, the new Arab, Islam and the European Reformation. Elizabeth I made efforts to adjust her own religious rhetoric in order to minimize the differences with the Ottomans and facilitate relations. It's like, we're Christian, but you know what? We're not that Christian. We like these Muslims, and we're going to soften our hard Christian edges because we like the money. Yeah, we like the money, and we like Christianity, but not that much. We like the money a lot more. So that's Andrea Benedette. Okay, Benedette Andrea in 2008, Women and Islam in Early Modern Lit. So yeah, you'll find out that the English have actually wiped a lot of this from their history. I saw a historian state, and I cannot find the references, but he stated that there was a decree by Elizabeth that the actions of the English crown, her and her people, to collaborate with the Muslims and the murders they committed of the Catholics and the thefts they committed of Catholic property, must not be covered in history in the universities. They need to provide a whitewashed version of history. Apparently that was official proclamation of some type. I cannot find it, but I saw a historian state this. I have not found the records. If anyone knows, please let me know. Yes, nominal Christianity became entrenched. How can Luther talk about corruption? Oh yeah, now Luther will, I'll go back to the Luther series. Yeah, so let me see. Oh, you found something that was inconsistent with your mother's encyclopedia. Yeah, no, agreed. There's going to be a lot of missing information. Wow. Gee whiz. Love the title, Reformation Retardation. Yeah, so fitting. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is completely retarded. I mean, that's honestly, genuinely, it's totally retarded. Let's continue. Remember, this is a summary. I don't want to read a whole encyclopedia to you, but I want to give you as much of an overview to tell you this is not isolated. This is not a one-off. This was coordinated. In a correspondence with Murad, she stresses that the monotheism and anti-idolatry of her religion. She uniquely describes herself as Elizabeth by the grace of the most mighty God, the three-part and yet singular creator of heaven and earth, Queen of England, France and Ireland, the most invincible and the most mighty defender of the Christian faith against all the idolatry of those unworthy ones that live amongst the Christians, fucking Catholics. Yeah, she's the invincible and most highly defender of the Christian faith against the Catholics. But you Muslims welcome, cash preferred. And those who falsely profess the name of Christ, the freaking Catholics, you Muslims, most welcome, cash preferred. And the letter of Elizabeth I to Murad III. Now, obviously, these are just summaries of this. So Islam and English drama. Okay, and let's see, military cooperation between the Ottoman Empire and the European powers started in earnest with the French-Ottoman alliance of 1535. Side effects included negative propaganda against France and its unholy alliance with a Muslim power. But eventually it becomes accepted. You know what? We need to collaborate with our enemies. We need to sell out to the Muslims because cash preferred. And according to historian Arthur Hassel, the Ottoman alliance had powerfully contributed to save France from the grasp of Charles V. It had certainly aided Protestantism in Germany, and from a French point of view, it had rescued the North German allies of Francis I. That's from historian Arthur Hassel, The Zenith of the French Monarchy, page 224. After the 1571 Battle of Lepanto, Ottoman support for France would continue, as well as support for the Dutch and the English. I wonder, how did the Dutch and English become naval superpowers? Yeah, hard work. You know, it's that Protestant work ethic and selling out to the Muslims because cash preferred. And so after 1580, they became naval superpowers. Total mystery how. Complete mystery. Nobody knows. And support for Protestants and Calvinists as a way to counter the Catholics. The European Reformation disrupted Christian discourse in a number of areas. Islam was part of this disruption as the Reformation made it acceptable for Christian powers, rulers, and thinkers to align with Muslim powers. This article, Islam and the European Reformation. So throughout the period of the Reformation, a number of alliances were forged between the Ottomans and Protestant rulers. And this is where the Protestants are going to have to come at me and say, but the Catholics, the Pope did. Yeah, it's like, okay, so you guys did 90 million sins. The Pope maybe did 3 that we can count historically, but the Pope is bad. Yeah! And I'm sorry, but that's retarded. So, although, despite claims of similarities, this does not mean the Ottomans were exclusively pro-Protestant in foreign policy terms. They would work with Catholic powers when their self-interest required them to do so, although they were giving it to the Catholics in the rear as often as they could. But this just means they were playing both sides, but it is very clear from the evidence they were overwhelmingly on one side. The Abduls found out early the Western people loved wealth and money more than their homelands. Yes, that's exactly what they discovered. And oh, yes, in fact, this is true. And this was mentioned to me by someone a couple of days ago. In the Netherlands, the Catholics had to pay money to get married, having children, getting kids baptized. They had to pay the jizya. I wonder where that could have come from. I wonder where they could have gotten this idea. Make the Catholics pay money to have their religion. Pay the jizya. I have no idea where that could come from. No, it's a total mystery, Eva. Total mystery. Complete mystery. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We'll probably never find out. Nonetheless, the Reformation changed the face of Europe in many ways. One was breaking the taboo about allying with the Muslim power, breaking the taboo of allying with the Muslim power against other Christians. Well, according to Martin Luther, those aren't Christians. The Pope is the devil, literally. He is Satan. He worships Satan. He serves Satan. The Catholics are all satanic. They worship a satanic Pope. They are practicing Satanism, whereas the Muslims they're kind of like us, they don't do idolatry like those Catholics. Those Catholics worship Mother Mary, and we Protestants and Muslims, we have the pure faith. We have the Quran alone, because it's a clear Quran, and the book has spoken. You get the idea. So let's say perhaps the best example of this is the Anglo-Moroccan alliance. In 1551, Thomas Windham, an English naval officer and explorer, set sail for Morocco. He wants to establish trade between England and Morocco. His mission comes at a sensitive time. Catholic Spain has emerged as the most powerful country in Europe. The Protestant English were scared of the Spanish, and they were looking for allies to destroy the Spanish. So he gets a very favorable reaction in Morocco, and English traders were soon sailing to North Africa, much to the dismay of the Spanish crown. They wouldn't trade in Europe. They were giving money to the dragon that was going to eat them. Trade grew, and Queen Elizabeth created the Barbary Company, also known as the Turkish Company, by the way. I have no idea why the Turkish Company should make the Dutch had the Dutch East India Company, and the English had the Barbary Pirates Company, also known as the Turkish Company, Turkey Company. Maybe Ottoman. She should have called it the Ottoman. We sold our souls to the Ottomans Company. Who knows? In 1585, which formalized the expansion of trade with North and West African states, particularly Morocco. Now, the article that I showed you earlier, the one I pasted, that lengthy article I mentioned, you should read about how the English and these other Protestant sellouts were supplying Western technology to the Muslims. They were kind of like, give us some money and we'll give you everything we have to give you an advantage over us, cash preferred. So, yeah. The company helped to forge diplomatic ties with the Ottoman Empire and the Barbary states, which were strategic allies against Spain and all the other Catholic nations. So, yeah, let's screw over the Catholics. Looks like Martin Luther's ideas took hold, and they said, yeah, Martin was right. Let's screw over the Catholics. So these alliances provided England with valuable political and military support. It has also massively financed and boosted England's navy. Now, for some reason, I'm willing to bet. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Drop a 1 in the chat if I'm right. Your history class skipped over all of this. Just please drop a 1 in the chat if I am correct, that your history class told you none of this. Catherine says, now I can see the clumsy tracks of Islam stomping up behind Christianity like Sasquatch in the new snow. Except Sasquatch moves like stealthy, man. Sasquatch is like, the man's like a ghost. He doesn't stomp around. I mean, seriously, we'd have found him by now. Not called Perfidious Albion for nothing. Oh, yeah. They were jealous of, international networks in Catholic churches. How much of the support by the Axis of the Ottoman in World War I is an anti-Catholic movement? Well, it seems like, yes, it was. Villainous, you're actually onto something. Today, I learned from one of my subs that the Habsburgs wanted to end the war, but the war dragged on for another year because that would destroy the Habsburgs, who were the Catholics. So that was punishment. Giving it to the Catholics from the very Islamic. Yeah, I apologize for my uneducated Africanisms. Maybe I should be more, I should be more academic. Hello, everyone. My name is Lloyd, and I'm an educated man, and we're going to be talking now about a very difficult topic in history. Of course, we want to be charitable, and we've got to love our neighbors, and we don't want to say anything bad, but we want to, of course, speak the truth, and it's very important. But this doesn't mean that we need to be weak. It's very important to be weak, and to be weak, you must be inoffensive, and so therefore we're going to dilute the truth. And we're not going to say anything nasty because the truth is painful. But I want to kind of hint at the truth and say that maybe the Protestants didn't exactly behave in a Christian way. They were kind of like Muslims and whatever. Okay, so the ban the Catholics even to have one church in the Netherlands. Yeah, no, agreed. Ignatius, I'm speechless. I knew it was bad, but not this bad. Oh, it's even worse. Trust me, once you read the history, it's even worse. Oh my God. 1600s, King James allowed British merchants to enter the slave trade. Why? Because that was profitable. Who was doing it? The Muslims. Where did the Brits get this idea? Where did the Brits get this? Where did they get the Navy, by the way? Man, where did the Brits get the Navy? Where did they get the idea about slavery? I have no idea. It's a mystery. We will never know because your history books aren't going to tell you. That's for sure. Okay, moving on. Money, 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 for sure. Very thick and filled. So guys, please let me know. Drop a one. There it is. Yeah, a bunch of ones coming through. Thank you very much. I'm a little bit delayed on my comments here. Yeah. So I'm shocked. I feel even more convicted to expose this nonsense. Yeah, they leaped over it, didn't they, Just Janice? Hello, Barrington. Yeah, the British and the East India Trading Company went to war with each other in India. Yeah, I guess over money, right? Over money. And by the time the instructor defines the exclusions and board to, yeah, exactly. So thank you guys, I appreciate that. So yeah, it looks like I'm not just making stuff up, but yeah, they skipped over the history very, very much. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to drop this article, Islam and the European Reformation, in the chat so that you have it. That's Islam and the European Reformation, the New Arab article. I've just dropped it in the chat. So the Ottomans saved the Reformation, and they did. Ottoman trade networks via Venice, for instance, and ambassadors like Ogir Gisland de Busbek disseminated Islamic ideas to Europe through merchant exchanges and diplomatic gifts. Well. Busbek sent Turkish manuscripts to European libraries, including theological works. So they weren't just sending the Quran. So a lot more ideas were suddenly making their way into Europe. And these ideas were being absorbed by the quote-unquote Christians. I use that word very loosely. Ottoman rulers approached the Protestants, who were also fighting against the common enemy, the Catholic Habsburgs. The military activism of the Ottoman Empire was the reason why Lutheranism was able to survive in spite of the opposition of Charles V and reach recognition at the Peace of Augsburg in September 1555. Now, I guess you always read about the Peace of Augsburg, about how the Catholics and the Protestants came to a mutual conclusion, but they don't tell you just how far the Muslims were involved in that. So the consolidation, the expansion, and legitimization of Lutheranism in Germany by 1555 should be attributed to Ottoman imperialism more than to any other single factor. That's Jack Goody, Islam in Europe. So Villainous says, when England was staunchly Catholic, it destroyed slavery and then restarted again after the Reformation. Isn't that interesting? Sought to redeem themselves later, but why succumb to it in the first place? Because they sold out for money to Islam. They sold out for money. Elizabeth sold out. Simple. It's that simple. Cash preferred. Ecumenicism creep. Okay, so Oa says, I knew some of it as Slovak history is not as guilt-ridden as others, but just broad strokes. Yeah, well, yeah. So the Protestants also routinely forced concessions from the Catholics from the Catholics for aid against the Muslim Ottomans. But they were collaborating with the Muslims, so they were just benefiting themselves. So they were playing a double game, just like the Muslims were. And the Dutch, driven by commercial interests and anti-Catholic interests, allied with the Muslims of the Moluccas to expel the Portuguese. They actually fought together to get rid of the Portuguese to take over the spice trade. How did the Dutch get so rich on the spice trade? I have no idea. It's a total mystery. It's a total mystery. We'll never know. We will never know. It's a complete mystery. No one's ever going to be able to find out. It's one of those things. They were just lucky, I guess. A case of money over treason against other Christians. That's by C.R. Boxer, The Dutch Seaborne Empire, 1600 to 1800. Yeah, I have no idea. That's always a possibility. You never know. Wealthy reign. Well, where'd she get her money? So let's continue. The Dutch. During the Dutch Revolt, the Dutch looked for help from every nationality. Indeed, even a Turk, as wrote the secretary of Jan van Nassau. Right, the Dutch saw the Ottoman successes against the Habsburgs with great interest and said, "Yeah, we need to get close to those Muslims. We like what they're doing because they said they like us and we like them, and we're so religiously similar. Maybe we should be pals." William of Orange wrote around 1565, "The Turks are very threatening, which will mean, we believe, that the King of Spain will not come to the Netherlands this year. Letter of William of Orange to his brother. The Dutch looked expectantly at the development of the siege of Malta. Like, yeah, that's good stuff. Let's go kill those Catholics. That's great. Yay, Islam. Go Islam. That's the Dutch, hoping that the Ottomans were in Valladolid already. You know what? What we need is a Muslim Europe. The Dutch are going, guys, we really need a Muslim Europe. You know what? Muslims got to take Spain, got to take Sicily, Italy. They got to, if they can just wipe out the Catholics, we can have a Muslim Europe, and us Dutch, we'll just chill because they like us. They're going to leave us alone. They're our friends, and we're going to make money. We're going to be rich. Life is going to be good. I'd say that's a little naive, and I'd say it's also potentially evil. But that's what they did. So instead of helping their Christian brothers, they were like, yeah, Martin Luther's right. Those Catholics are evil and they deserve to die. And, whatever the Muslims want to do, we're for that. And personally, I think that is evil. I think that is treason against Christianity, against Christendom. That is treason against Europe. I think this is a stain on Western European history. It is a stain on the Reformation, and I think this is why this has not been, shall we say, on the front page of Western history books. And that's from Jeffrey Parker and Leslie M. Smith, The General Crisis of the 17th Century. Millions came to Holland for our tulips, which were a gift from the Ottomans. Yeah, these men literally had to deal with the devil. Yeah, Australia used to be known as the New Holland. Let me see if I missed anything. Despicable traitors to their Christian brothers. Yes, exactly so. So Muslims were outrageously arrogant. Yeah, they're told, correct, they're all above the Christians. So let's continue with this. William of Orange sent ambassadors to the Ottoman Empire for help in 1566. When no other European power would help, the Dutch cause was offered active support only by the Ottoman Turks. Very interesting. So let's have a look at Shakespeare's Muslim hero. Shakespeare, loved Shakespeare. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, until the last syllable of recorded time has lighted fools the way to dusty death. Art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, a figment of the heat oppressed brain? Loved Shakespeare growing up, really enjoyed Shakespeare. Sold us out. Yes, they did. Just Janice, are you in Europe? Or are you in the States? The government still does think this way. Yep, there are some problems today. You'll see them cropping up right now. Europe is having a few issues, and it might be because of these old historical ties. Just Janice, are you in the States or are you in Europe? Okay, so let's look at Shakespeare's Muslim hero, Othello, right, by William Shakespeare. So Morocco catches the English imagination. Oh, Morocco's amazing, doll. It's like, we got to go there on holiday. Let's go. And Shakespeare captured the enchantment with the Moroccans in his play Othello. The character of Othello, the Moor, they always call them Moors, they never call them Muslims. It's Islamists, it's never Muslims. Anyway, is believed to be based on a Muslim called Abd al-Wahid ben Masaud, the Moroccan envoy sent to London to deepen ties between the two countries. I'll look at this Muslim coming along to do a good deed, to do God's work, to make peace with those Muslims, because our religions are so similar. General Othello is brave, honest, intelligent, moral, and upright. He marries a Venetian woman, Desdemona, the daughter of a powerful, typo, my fault, Venetian politician. But Othello is tricked by his manipulative and Machiavellian right-hand man, Iago, into believing that his wife has been unfaithful. So Othello kills Desdemona because, you see, this is an example of early Islamophobia. It's shocking. I know. It's like how Iago was an Islamophobe, and Iago was a Catholic. You can tell them. You can tell these Catholics, these disgusting Catholics, Islamophobes, and this poor, heroic, noble Muslim, and it's Islamophobia, man. And he kills Desdemona, but then he learns of the deceit, and then he kills himself. But what makes Othello interesting is not only that a Muslim is made into the hero, but the greatest playwright ever, but the fact that the antagonist, of course, is called Iago. Iago is Spanish for Saint James. the Catholic patron saint of Spain, the brother of Jesus. So he's basically saying these Catholics. So excuse my French. But yeah, anyway, Catholics bad, and Muslims good, and Muslims noble. And you guys really need to start seeing Muslims as noble, as amazing people. And those Catholics are evil. I have no idea if there's any propaganda, if there's a message in Shakespeare's work here. Who knows? It's a mystery. No one will ever know. It's one of life's little mysteries. We'll never ever know. Ralph says the way they spin the Dutch Ottoman connection in school is crazy when you finally see the truth. Yeah, I know. My head's spinning from it. Yeah, the Antichrist, according to John, is denying Christ, and that is true. So he's an Antichrist. But it just shows that the English, the Dutch, the French, the Germans, and many others were willing to sell out their Christian principles. They sold out their Christian principles while claiming Bible alone. We follow Jesus. We are the true Christians. We have the true message, but they were willing to sell out their Christian principles to people that are literally anti-Christian, according to the definition of St. John in the Bible. They sold out because cash preferred. So this is hypocrisy. The people claiming that they were rescuing Christianity were hypocrites, were liars, were traitors, were selling out Christianity for money. And you cannot serve both God and mammon. And they loved mammon for sure, because they made a lot of money. Hopefully I'm not just ranting and raving here pointlessly. Hopefully you can see that these Christians sold out to the Muslims. Protestant reformers, these Reformation figures sold out for money and power. Simple as that. Well, he had to write for Protestant patrons. Do you know that Martin Luther was paid to write propaganda for the kings? Do you think he had to, or do you think he liked making cash preferred? So do you think Shakespeare had to write propaganda, or do you think, maybe he tapped into a popular vein, but he would have also amplified it. So good Christian, right? I keep hearing about the Church of England was so noble, and then you find out the Church of England was a bunch of sellouts. The Church of England was a bunch of evil sellouts who sold out their nation, sold out their national pride, sold out their integrity, sold out their Christianity for money. And when Catholicism was against the law, it's hard to say if it was his belief or just knowing his audience. Sure, but still, the results are the same. If you fall out a window, right, and kill someone, whether you did it deliberately or accidentally, they're just as dead. So what's the difference to them? The results are the same. The outcome is identical. Okay, so yeah, why are they lauding the Muslims? I agree fully. Why are they lauding the Muslims? Do you understand the problems I have here? Money grubbing traitors. And so there you go. So yeah, Villainous, do you want to come up for a minute? Up to you. Let me know. I'm going to just drop the link in the chat. If you'd like to, you're welcome to come up. If you want to say a few words on this issue, if you're available. Of course, I know that you have. Okay, so whether or not Shakespeare was engaging in propaganda remains a matter of debate, granted. But he was reflecting the mood of Elizabethan England. This was the mood of the heads of state. This was the mood at the time. They would rather be Muslim than Catholic, because Islam is so much like Christianity. It's the best Christianity, and we would rather you would rather say the Shahada than yeah, it's better for you. Moving on. A political and military alliance between England and Morocco was actively explored and attempted. Numerous letters were exchanged between Queen Elizabeth and Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur, and plans for military expeditions aimed at stopping Spanish power were made, and they did collaborate on a bunch of things. Reformation, multi-culti madness. You think multi-culti is new? It's a Reformation idea. Thank those Christians who sold out Europe to Islam. In the 1580s, Portugal underwent a crisis as Spain made claims to the Portuguese throne. Don Antonio, a Portuguese prince, claimed his right to rule. Now, he was weaker than King Philip II of Spain, but he found an ally in the English. So the English were limited in the support they could offer, so they turned to the Moroccans again to help keep Don Antonio in place. And of course, through them, there was the Ottoman connection and so on. So this initially failed. Don Antonio fell too quickly for either England or Morocco to do anything. But there were attempts to return him to power by both the Moroccans. The Moroccans were trying to help him, as well as the English. The Muslims were actively trying to meddle in the political affairs of Europe here, against the Catholics, of course. But each time, one side could not meet the requirements of the other. Nevertheless, the significance of the Anglo-Moroccan alliance included bringing a Muslim and Christian power together against another Christian power. This is not the only time that this happened, but it was also the beginning of a new way of thinking in England that would give rise to the British Empire. Yeah, we can work with these Muslims and we'll get rich. We'll make a little bit of money. So the European Reformation disrupted Christian discourse in a number of areas. Islam was part of the disruption, as the Reformation then made it acceptable for Christian powers, rulers, and thinkers to make allies with the Muslim powers. Islam has, since its emergence, been a part of the scene in Europe. It has influenced European thought and predates European colonial encounters with Islam and Muslims, as well as the post-Second World War immigration boom from Muslim-majority countries in Europe. What you're seeing today is nothing new. It's just a culmination of something that's been going on for 500 years. The history of the Reformation teaches us that Islam, Christianity, Europe, and the West are not homogeneous solids that we inherit, and trying to find commonality is nothing new, nor is the invention of liberal multiculturalists. So saying, well, you know, we share, why can't we all just coexist? That coexist bumper sticker that everyone, let me actually go find that. Let me actually bring up that stupid bumper sticker that everyone likes. Coexist sticker, let's bring that up. There we go, coexist. So it seems that this idea is not new. This goes back to the Reformation. Why can't we just coexist? Let's overlook the differences. Just like I mentioned that the Protestants looked at each other as morally equal, and therefore they would overlook the actual contradictory differences that actually made a mockery of their idea of equality. The same idea existed in the Reformation already. And the idea of multiculti, let's all just get along. We're all the same. Look, we both love Jesus. Let's just get along. We both love Jesus. Yeah, we do. You know what? You guys are like us. You guys are Christians too. Yes. So yeah, filthy treasonous lies, my lord. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, so moving on. Liever Turks than Paps. Liever Turks than Paps. So in 1568, William of Orange sends a request to the Ottomans to attack Spain. He says, hey guys, look homies, can you attack Spain for me? Muslims, hello, Muslims, can you attack Spain for me? And they go like, so in 1574, William of Orange and Charles IX of France, through his pro-Huguenot ambassador, Francois de somebody, Bishop of Dax, again tries to obtain the support of the Ottoman ruler Selim. It looks like they were on first-name terms. Like, hey buddy, can you beat up someone for me? Selim II sends support through a messenger who tried to put the Dutch in contact with the Moriscos of Spain. And he says, you know what, go talk to the Moriscos in Spain, they'll help you. I got my spies embedded there, they're pretending to be Christians. And also talk to the pirates of Algiers, those same pirates that are responsible for the creation of the US Navy and the Marines, because the Marines were sent to stop the piracy that was robbing the US blind, taking 20% of its treasure because they were kidnapping sailors. Piracy, kidnapping, booty, plunder, and ransom. Yeah, I wonder if the English had anything to do with that. Who knows? Could be. I wonder if the Dutch had any involvement. Maybe if we search and we'll find something. So, Selim also sends a great fleet, which conquered Tunis in October 1574. Thus, he reduces the Spanish pressure on the Dutch, and this leads to negotiations at the Conference of Breda. Then the phrase liever Turks than Paps, rather a Turk than a Papist. And that's fancy. It doesn't say I'd rather live under the Ottoman Emperor than the Pope. It doesn't say, no. It means rather Muslim than Catholic. Paps means Catholic. Papist means Catholic. It's a Martin Luther thing. Was a Dutch slogan during the Dutch Revolt at the end of the 16th century. The slogan was used by the Dutch mercenary naval forces called the Sea Beggars in their fight against Catholic Spain. The banner of the sea beggars was also similar to that of the Turks, with a crescent on a red background. So these Dutch sea beggars were using Muslim banners. Okay. So yeah, Ottoman-Dutch economic relations in the early modern period, 1571 to 1699. And the phrase "liever Turks than Paps" was a common one. So we know that already. Yeah, the Flemish noble Descartes wrote that he would rather become a tributary to the Turks than live against his conscience and be treated according to those anti-heresy edicts. Yeah, he'd rather, yeah, okay, fine. Okay, moving on. And then you get this interesting book called Calvino-Turkismus. I'm missing something here. Okay, guys, whatever's causing an argument, it stops now in the chat. Okay. Rough, not sure what deviation, but okay, so moving on. So the British author William Reynolds, who lives from 1544 to 1594, he's an Anglican who becomes a Catholic. He writes, they call it a pamphlet. I have no idea why. It's a whole book. If you click the link and go to the book, it's actually a book. He writes a book in criticism of these problematic political and theological alliances, and he compares Calvinism to Islam. So this goes back to the 1500s, and he calls it Mohammetana, right? He argues that both are heretical and detrimental to Christian orthodoxy. And the work's 4 books systematically compare Calvinist and Islamic doctrines and portray Calvinism as heretical. And he says, no, Calvinism, this is a Protestant who reads Calvin and decides to become a Catholic. Okay? This is a Protestant who reads Calvin and becomes a Catholic because he goes like, no, this is off the rails. So he looks at predestination. He says that Calvinist predestination is Islamic fatalism. Both deny free will, which is correct. I covered that 2 weeks ago. Scriptural authority. He says that Calvinists sola scriptura with Islamic reliance on the Quran and rejecting church tradition. So Calvinist sola scriptura, like Islam, relies on the Quran alone, Bible alone, Quran alone, and of course, in so doing, they can reject church authority. So a single sacred text is ultimate authority. Sorry, my typos. I see I've messed up a bunch of sentences. I did say I was tired. I slept before this. Iconoclasm. Reynolds links Calvinist rejection of images to Islamic iconoclasm. Both oppose Catholic veneration. Why would you want to be more like the Muslims? I don't understand. Right? And then, of course, anti-Trinitarian tendencies. Some Calvinist views on God's nature align with Islamic Unitarianism. Now, there are contextual differences, granted. There are contextual differences, which one is like Arab or Turk, and the other one is European. There are certain contextual things, granted, but there are very strong parallels. So, for instance, some key points from his book. Calvinist theology and Ottoman influence. So, Calvinist theology was shaped by interactions with the Ottoman Empire, according to the scholar. Right, the Calvinist emphasis on predestination and strict moral codes, the Sharia, is contrasted with the Ottoman system of governance and law and their relative religious toleration, which was temporary. Right, that was just to make nice. They do have something called tulip. Okay, then strategic alliances. He talks how Protestant leaders, influenced by Calvinist thought, made alliances with the Ottomans against Catholic enemies. These alliances often involve trade agreements and diplomatic negotiations, as well as military support. Muhammad Afridi, this twit as well. This guy can't fucking spell. What a doofus. Let me just ban him. I'm not even going to bother to read this. Yeah. So, yeah, no, Muhammad, you're the one. You are so miserable because I trigger you. You know, that's why you're here, because you are miserable, you're angry, you're a depressed person, because Allah requires you to hate. You worship a God of hate, and you're here, and I laugh. I make fun of Islam, I make fun of you, I make fun of Allah because it's funny, because yeah, but you are you're a hateful little bigot. Oh my God, Villainous is here. My gosh, Villainous, how long have you been there? I can't hear you. Villainous, you are muted. I cannot hear you. No wonder. Because you're muted now. Now you're unmuted. Let me see. I did not mute you, that's for sure.
Can you hear me now?
Speak up. Say again.
Can you hear me now?
You're very weak, very soft. No wonder sorry, man, I didn't see you in the. Sorry, I just noticed. How long have you been there, Villainous?
Hang on, I'll fix up the sound.
I can hear you, but you are very soft. You're gonna have to shout. Yeah. Yeah. What is he talking about? This guy can't spell for shit. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very highly devised spiderweb. So there were detailed economic interactions between Calvinist influenced religions and the Ottoman Empire. There were trade routes and markets. The book examines how these economic ties influenced development
All
of
right. Is
commerce.
that better?
Still a bit soft, right? Then you had exploration of cultural and intellectual exchanges between the Calvinists and the Ottomans, and he discusses how the ideas from the Ottoman Empire influenced Calvinist thought. And then he provides historical case studies of key figures that exemplify the relationships and alliances between Calvin and the Ottoman Empire, which shaped European history. Villain, over to you for a minute then.
Yeah. Can you hear me now properly or not?
Still soft, dude. I mean, I'm gonna have to crank up my volume here to hear you.
All right. It's a bit odd because I'm maxing out here.
Okay, I can hear you now, so I think you're okay now. Try, go ahead.
Yeah. I put the microphone very close. All right. That's probably a bit better. Yeah. Just like this bit here that you're talking about with all these different types of cultural things and strategic things. Look, I know a lot. We've talked about things in the past with visions. Things gone weird now. There is an underlying. I think we might remember as Christians that there's an underlying demonic aspect going underneath. The reason I talk about, I could actually quote from the Bible, actually, from right at the start of Genesis. Well, I don't even have to quote it because people will know anyway. Where Adam and Eve are in the garden, right, and things are going swimmingly, and then can't see it. Yeah.
And then we can hear you fine.
Yeah, no, it's all right. The chat on the side was going berserk. I couldn't see myself.
Okay.
Sorry. So in the Garden of Eden, we've got Adam and Eve sitting there in this ideal situation, perfect relationship with God, and then they decide on their own whim to do the opposite, right? And they're doing their own thing, and really all this Ottoman stuff and all these interactions with Protestants and what have you, it's like people choosing to do their own thing, and that this whole idea, not in the garden, that it's Satan prompting that, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with this situation, is that there's some prompting going on from demonic forces underneath, pushing this sort of idea amongst us. We need to be gods ourselves. I was sounding a bit sort of wacko-do with regards to talking about Satan particularly, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you're getting a bit of an envelope around. What's the common feature with all these? What can you see around it? And in terms of how we're relating with God and how we're relating with all these secular things, and why are people bothering to go against the Catholic Church, and why are people focusing on hating the Jews at the moment? Like there's this, just in the last, like we all know, for like the last year or so, like anti-Semitism has just gone through the roof in the world. Unbelievable. Why is that happening?
Islam. Islamic money invested into universities, they've got their money's worth. Qatari money in universities.
So a lot of these things are just like, it's just a war against what Christ is trying to do in the world. You know what I mean? And it comes in different forms, and it's a lot of the political stuff is involved in it, because it's the elites wanting to run things themselves and be gods themselves rather than allow Christ to be. I think the Catholic Church is not immune to it, but it in some sense it's because I think you mentioned yesterday, or the day before, the Catholic Church acts like a manager rather than a ruler. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a different idea. So so look, I don't think Joe Blow, average Protestant, is not going out of his way to be this manipulative Lutheran like we're seeing here displayed by some of these guys. They do have a genuine love for Christ and think that what they're doing is correct. It's a bit like the average Muslim probably doesn't realise that Muhammad was such a nasty guy. So the average Protestant is not really that like this hateful anti-Catholic pig. But it is extremely important to understand moving forward what the origins are, so we can make proper decisions. I mean, why are we Protestant? What are we protesting against? When you say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Protestant,"
Well,
I mean, it's just like
Martin Luther's assertion was that the Pope is the Antichrist. That, I mean, he was talking about the Pope of the day, right? The Pope is the Antichrist. The Catholics worship Satan. The Catholics are satanic, right? I mean, these are some bold claims, right? And I'm not sure that he can actually prove his claims, but then he speaks well of the Muslims who are literally anti-Christian, while at the same time, this total hypocrite is claiming that he has rescued the Bible, he has returned to the original Christian faith, and he has restored Christianity. And yet he's making alliances and speaking glowingly of these Muslims who are literally anti-Christian. And he's enabling and benefiting from these alliances.
Yeah, that's right. It's so some of these motivations at the start, like that whole, and we're getting swept along, aren't we? You know, like the average Joe Blow Christian gets swept along with what these high level things are doing. And it's unfortunate for us.
What point do you say that, look, the leadership is corrupt? I mean, something I've noticed from many Protestants that I've spoken to, and I mean, I say this as a Protestant, right, is that you have people going, okay, sure, Martin Luther was a mass murderer, a liar, a lunatic, a blasphemer, a genocidal maniac, and a complete fraud, but his theology was perfectly sound, fantastic theologian, 100% true.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily the case either. You know, it's what he thought up.
I mean, his ideas, his political and social and legal ideas, came from how he interpreted the gospel. So he is looking at the gospel completely differently. How can they say the man is completely theologically pure when his ideas are based on the gospel? When you say, yeah, let's Calvin, let's burn people at the stake because that's what God wants. It's like, where did Jesus say that? And Calvin is saying, no, that's scriptural.
Yeah.
Understand that? Then they say, no, Calvin's murders, Martin Luther's genocides with the peasants and so on, that's got nothing to do with his theology. Those are completely separate. Martin Luther's theology is pure as the driven snow. And then that is a bullshit argument.
It's like critical race theory today, that you create a monster that you can hate. You know, in the sense, like there's this papal thing. You know, so you can, we're calling things papers earlier on in the chat. You've created this monster that now you, as a person who's trying to do something different to the Catholic Church, can hate. You can hate that now. And a lot of the collaboration with the Turks that you're talking about is probably prompted because of papal hate. So that sort of go hand in hand. You know, your enemy, my enemy, the enemy of your enemy is my friend, sort of idea. And so when friends get together, they chat and swap ideas and corrupt each other, don't they? So if you're going to be friends with the Ottomans, maybe you're going to snap up a few funny ideas. Yeah, so yeah, which is not good.
Fair enough. Darn it. Actually, wait, I need to... No, fair enough. But at what point do you say, look, the people who started the Reformation were corrupt. The people who started the Reformation were morally corrupt, were religiously corrupt. They were financially corrupted. They had political aims, and they were clearly had their head up the ass of Islam. I mean, at what point do we admit this? At what point do we say the Reformation was an exercise in corruption, theologically, politically, scripturally, in every possible way. It was an entirely corrupt theocratic movement with Islam running the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if Islam was generally running the whole thing or not, but it's certainly highly influential. Clearly, yeah. It's
I mean, look, I still have like 20 slides to go on this, at least, to put in the rest. And the thing is, this is a summary of what could be 1,000 pages. This is a tiny summary. The more I dig, remember, this is my first run through of this. And the more I dig, the more I see Islam actively involved, not necessarily at the forefront, but they wound up the little toy and they sent the toy walking.
Well, I think the with Islam, you've got the political intrigue stuff built into the religion. Like it's a political process, right? You mentioned that before in some of your streams, and so the political and the religious come together. I think I might mention one of my chats earlier on. We got the render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. Jesus wanted to be quite clear that the machinations of the political sphere are quite worldly, and it's not part of what is to be presented to God. Whereas that is not the ambition of the Islamic world. The two are combined, and in the really that idea of combining the church and the state, isn't that what something like England's a classic example. You've got King Henry VIII creating the Anglican Church so he can divorce his wife and get another one.
Yeah,
rinse and repeat. Having lots of wives like Muhammad.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he murdered 2 of his wives. Is that Christian?
Yeah. So this bit, and so he becomes the head of the church. So that's a distinct merging of church and state.
Yeah. Where'd they get that idea? I wonder what model could they have been following? Gee whiz, total mystery.
But I think the model repeats. I think it's not just necessarily an Islamic problem. It's a sin problem. I think that's why I pointed out at the about Adam and Eve. It's the same problem. Is that somebody's thinking they can be God instead of God, be their own gods. And really, that's what Adam and Eve did. They, rather than listen to the actual God, they elevated their ideas to be greater than his, and chose to do that. And so, really, when you get a state leader like Henry VIII or whatever becoming the head of the church, he's actually saying, "I'm elevating myself to that status now." Whereas the manager style from the Pope is not like that.
No, but look,
what Ignatius is pointing out there, the Gnosticism, but they're all there's that theme is there all the time with all these things.
Yeah,
it's people.
You've got to ask yourself. There's a true point. As you were talking, I was thinking exactly this. All of them seek to attack the Catholic Church. All of this hatred. Luther created hatred. Islam creates hatred. This is not Christian. I mean, I don't hate any of the Protestants. I might think they're a bunch of idiots sometimes, sure, and they are often, because I mean, look, some people are stupid. Let's be honest. But I don't hate them. I hate their ideas. I think their ideas are stupid and toxic. But I don't hate them as people. I wish they were just less of what they are. I mean, hate the sin, right? Not the sinner. But Calvinism, the God of Calvinism, literally hates the sinner. That's Islamic. None of that is Muslim. None of Luther's morals were Christian. None of his morals were Christian. He would talk a good game, sure, but that's hypocrisy. That is not Christian. None of this is Christian. At what point do we say the entire Reformation was corrupt from the start? Much of its claims why they were doing it was purely to cover their agendas. And also, they were exaggerating a lot of the problems with the Catholic Church. A lot of that was just sheer exaggeration and lies. Yeah,
that's a bit ironic that that they're complaining about the Catholic Church having too much secular power. So what do the Reformers do? They immediately get in bed with local princes and gain power like that.
They did exactly what they were accusing the church of.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
they did exactly what the Muslims did. They became caliphs.
Yeah.
It's the whole Khilafah idea. I mean, when you look at these, man, me reading through this, looking at all of these shifts in philosophy, all of this is Islamic shifts. You can find it in the Sharia. You can relate all of these shifts in philosophy to what you find in Islam. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Mm.
You know, I mean, so my thesis that I've put forward so far, based on the evidence, does it seem like it holds water? I mean, does it seem like it's a far-fetched, crazy idea, or there's something going on here? Because there's a lot more history I can dig into. I mean, I can go for 500 pages on this. You know?
Well, I'm sure there would be. I mean, the Ottoman Empire has been a large empire for a long time, and to say that it has no influence in its neighbours would be ridiculous. You know, there will have been high-level discussions between them on a regular basis, and some would have been quite defensive. I'm sure of it. So to say that the Ottomans didn't have their fingers in the pie in the Reformation, i.e., the Catholic versus Protestant movement, they would have been loving that. They would have thought, "Oh, fantastic opportunity! Let's get involved." And even if it wasn't started by the Ottomans, I can tell you they would have loved to have been in it because it's in their best interest.
There's a lot of documentation in archives that whenever I dig, they say, no, you're going to have to look at the archives in Istanbul. That's the blank wall you come to. The evidence is in the archives in Istanbul. Not available in English. Got to find it in Turkey. So there's evidence we just don't have access to. So to me, there's credible evidence that maybe these guys were plotting. They were plotting for a long time. We think in terms of hours. They think in terms of calendars.
Yeah, that's right. It's the long game. You know, it's a bit like the current invasion of Europe. There's a long game there. You know, it's not a 6-year war or 5-year war like the two world wars. It's a long game war. This war that they want
even World
to
War I found out. I mean, they extended World War One to try and destroy the Habsburgs. Apparently, I need to look into that. I wonder, should we bring anyone else in? Is there anyone else who would like to come up for a few minutes to add a comment? I don't want to go too long. I've only got one more slide to do, but I'll probably skip that slide for next time because the rest of my slides are not edited. I only have one more edited slide, but I can leave it for another time, for Wednesday or Thursday or something. Is there anyone else who would like to come up? So hold on, I see. Let me drop the link in the chat. So just to confirm again, Villain, it doesn't, I mean, so my thesis has some level of credibility. It doesn't seem like I'm just a lunatic.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I can't see how you see the world politics even today, and I sort of mentioned it before with that comment about the president of France and the president of Syria getting together. Like there's going to be relations of some description, and people's ulterior motives will come into play. And as I said before, I can guarantee you that any disruption in Europe is observed keenly by the Islamic world for an opportunity for them to spread Islam and take over.
Of course, yeah. And hi, do you have a camera follower?
They're probably still working it out.
Yeah, no.
Takes a few guys.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you what, I'll open it up to a few people to come up for comments. I'll take the chance. I'll take the risk. Follower of Jesus, do you have a camera and do you know how to enable your camera and mic? We cannot hear you.
That's probably not, having cameras is not necessarily important. Just more the mic.
Yeah, I just prefer to, I mean, if I can, I'd rather see people because everyone knows who I am. I'm not some rando like Muhammad Afridi, who's got more than one account.
The only problem is that sometimes you get
crazy people.
I found this when I'm doing Bible studies with daddies.
Hello.
You get crazies turn up.
Hello?
And they.
Yes, I know. Hello.
Pause. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
I do have a question. It's about Islam. I have some people in my life who are Muslims. And can I ask a question about that?
I mean, we're discussing a different topic today. We're talking about the Reformation.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Okay. Next time then, because I just joined and I saw that you were live, and I know you talk about
No, I
Islam
mean, yeah,
and
it would be off topic. It would distract us. We at the moment we're
Okay,
talking
no
about
problem.
an historical topic. But thank you. But next time.
Okay,
All right?
next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks then. Bye. Yeah. Anyone else? You're welcome. I'll give you guys a few minutes to come up. The link's in the chat. If anyone would like to. Is it over? Yes, just Janice. Janice, did you say you're in Europe or America? I don't recall seeing the answer. If you let me know. But yeah, so I mean, this is my thesis. I've got like another 20 slides or so to look at more the collaborations, the piracy, the issues that were involved, and any other thoughts? Anything that stood out for you, Villain?
I just wanted to point out that looking at the long-term history, like 2,000 years of this, it is Satan's best interest to destroy the church. And when we see breaks and problems in relations inside the church, and any of these crazy cults, the Gnostics and the all those guys, they're all in some way related to dark powers that are against Christ,
Right.
affecting the world. And it's sometimes when I use language like that, it feels a bit weird in terms of this is a mystical nonsense type thing. But I'm just asking people to look at the flow and see how things are panning out. See, there's always seems to be some sort of constant something against the basic story of Christ. That he came on earth, the Word of God made flesh. God Himself came to earth and was crucified and died and was raised on the third day and saved us from sin, etc. That basic concept, Satan has been at war against for 2,000 years. When you talk about the Gnostics earlier, that they're trying to take away Christ's humanity, so he's got some. It just appears to be a human being, that sort of thing. And there's a whole bunch of different views. I mean, with the Muslim one, there's Christ is only a prophet.
You've got excessive spirituality is purely a ghost, and excessive humanity. So yeah.
So they're all avoiding the reality of who Christ says that He is, and so all the actions going on and on and on, the schisms in the church and the 30,000 denominations or whatever, these are all activities that are anti-Christ. We really do need to get back together as one Christian nation, really. I'm not quite sure how that was going to occur, but
hopefully
we all need to get back. We talked about Unitarians yesterday. That's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you look at the facts, you look at what I've presented here. I mean, I'm hoping it's rational. I'm hoping it's based on solid evidence, and people can see that, right? And hang together factually, and that my interpretations of the data is not completely off the wall. But when you look at the Reformation and you realize it was a political crime on a massive scale, it was collusion with the enemy, it was a crime against Christianity, for that matter. Against the universal brotherhood of Christians, then you realize that it was a corrupt, utterly retarded enterprise. And how can we think it's true? How can we think that it brought Christianity? Because it opened the door to heresy and Islamic Christianity. It opened the door and validated literally anti-Christian Unitarianism as valid Christianity.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, what you're presenting, Lloyd, is the facts of the events, right? You've got some historical documentation or whatever, and you're presenting it. So that's the data. What you're presenting is basically this happened, that happened. Unitarians have been brought into the Bible societies like there's nothing wrong with it. This is just the way it is, right? It's not like you can probably look up. Somebody can probably independently go through the archives or the history of the Bible Society, and they'll see it. Right?
Right. I mean, why did the Bible Society have Unitarians run the Bible Society? And these are people that are literally anti-Christian. If we follow the Bible, and if people claim that the Holy Spirit guides them because they only follow the Bible, then the Holy Spirit will tell them, hey, no, do you know what St. John said? St. John said that people who deny that Christ is God are antichrist. And they go, you know what we need is more antichrist. We need inclusivity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and there's heaps of anti-Christian people in like universities who are studying the Bible. You know, there's heaps of them.
Yeah, but the Protestants opened the doors to that.
Mm.
That's
Look,
the problem. It's like all the evil that came from the Reformation.
If you're not a Christian, you find something is true. It's still true, right? So that's one thing. But like, there's a difference between, yeah, this dude said one plus one equals 2, and yeah, we both said 1 plus 1 equals 2. But this dude's an atheist and I'm not. That's one thing. But to have somebody come in with a particular bias, fiddling the pot, that's another thing, right? It's what's happening in the background. You know, things like that.
I have a question. I mean, you're Anglican. You're sort of more low church Anglican. I came from a high church Anglican background. Doesn't this information disturb you? Aren't you concerned? Two questions. That doesn't the information I present disturb you? And B, don't you think it's interesting that this is not taught in history class? That all of this is just brushed over? And also, third question: what do you think other Protestants who watch the channel, or what do they think? I mean, some of them can't be happy, and others obviously don't watch the channel because they think I'm an anti-Protestant hater or something. Just your thoughts on that.
No, it is confronting. I'm not going to deny it. But one thing I find valuable is that it strips away biases that I might have had in the past, particularly with regards to Catholics. The reality is that for the first 1500 years of Christendom, we're basically all Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you could. Does that mean that there's if Protestantism is right? Does that mean like for the first 1500 years there was no Christians? So that sort of understanding, I think, is improved as a result of this sort of process. I think another thing is in terms of some form of weird loyalty in inverted commas to my particular denomination, which just doesn't exist anymore. It's really loyalty to Christ, as far as I can tell, is the main thing. And the more you get loyal to Christ, a lot of this stuff, you basically say, sure, this particular idea has been around, but I can't live with that. Sola Scriptura is one, the classic one, because it's the councils of the Catholic Church that selected the books for the canon.
Yeah.
You can't divorce the church from the canon itself, that they're intermingled.
Of course, yeah. Luther has his own ideas. Yeah. Well, what do you think other people, I mean, you hang out in other channels. What do you think? I meant to reach out to Thaddeus actually recently. I need to actually contact him and get him on. I was thinking to do so next week. But that said, what do you think other Protestants think? Do they think I'm just making things up? Do they think I'm just a hater? Do they think I have a point? Are they disturbed, embarrassed, or just what do you think's happening out there?
Well, I think that someone who's green to the way you present, I think, could quite easily think that you're bashing Protestantism in particular, and in some ways you're certainly bashing Martin Luther and Calvin.
If you've spent the last 4 years reading Martin Luther, you'd hate him as much as I do too.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that is different than Joe Blow average Christian who is deeply committed and loving Christ.
Fair enough.
It's not the same thing.
But that doesn't mean that they're not steeped in error. It doesn't mean that they haven't, because
Absolutely.
look, the common excuse is, I don't follow Luther, I follow Jesus. Like, hold on, that's the word Luther said. You're quoting Luther. You claim you don't follow Luther. You claim you're not interested in Luther. You just quoted Luther, and you're doing exactly what Luther said you should do. Yeah, sure. Tell me another good story.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that they will have errors. I mean, it's not like Catholics are immune from error either. We all have our biases and errors, and as we go through life, we learn more and what have you. And yes, they will have been influenced by the basic ideas in their particular denomination, which is likely to be influenced by Calvin or Luther. Absolutely, that's something they need to grow out of. You know, if you can point out X error in understanding of Luther, for example, then and you can clearly see it, then you've grown, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I studied Calvin recently, when I had to do this, when basically Usama kind of asked me to do something about Calvin, and I did, and I wrote that paper and I did that talk on Calvin theology, on predestination, I realized this is Islam, just under a French Christian coat, but it's Islam, just disguised as Christianity. You know,
well, see, Usama's learning from coming onto your show, Lloyd.
Say again, sorry.
You know, the stuff that he hasn't heard before.
Say again, please. Sorry.
There's stuff that Osama is learning by coming onto your channel. He hasn't heard that stuff before. If you're completely ignorant of it, how can you? It's a bit hard to condemn people things they're completely ignorant of.
True.
But we should have as an ethos that we should be trying to find more to make sure we're being guided more and more towards the truth. We don't want to be willfully ignorant and jump off a cliff. You know, if we can open our eyes and make a deviation back to the path a bit.
Yeah. Look, yeah, I mean, so yeah. Look, we should thank you for coming on. Always good to listen to you. You always provide very insightful comments. There's always very interesting comments that you make. The things that you see, you know, your connections you make, and so on. For the audience, I did invite you. I did put the link there, so you guys were always welcome to pop on if you had a comment to make. You know. But Raf, I will send you an email, and then I owe someone else an email, and I will set up a call with you guys. It's easier than for me to write a million lines in email. Sorry, no, I'll set up a call. I'll send you an email, and we can chat. And thank you for your emails. So yeah, I mean, Villain, why do you stick around, knowing that I am basically, you know, I'm taking Protestantism, I'm putting it under a microscope, and then I'm shooting it with a shotgun in the head. What makes you stick around?
It's because truth is important. You know, when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the light," right? So the way is following, but the truth is like key to who Christ is, and we need to respect that. And so if we're living our lives trying to find more truth all the time, it's like in a sense it's an act of worship. You know, you're saying to God, I value truth as an important feature of my life, and I will continue throughout my life to follow that. Mm-hmm. And I understand that truth is something that's like an emanation of God. You know,
God is truth. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually by following what is true to the end, it's actually an act of worship properly of God in a way.
Right. No, God is truth. He's not separate from truth. I mean, he is truth. So if you speak the truth, you are echoing the nature of God. I mean, that's, I believe, the proper exegesis of that. So because we are made in the image of God, therefore, when we speak truth, we are being like him as much as we can as humans.
One of our problems as being humans is we get stuck in relative truth. You know, we've got our truth. You know, how many times have you heard that in the atheist?
That's nominalism. That's Oprah. That's Saint Oprah doing that.
Yeah.
That's nominalism. No, that's not truth. That's not objective truth. That is entirely nominalist relativism. Yeah, you're right.
That's right. And so that what I mean by following truth is not that. You know, you might find that you might feel strongly about issue X. It doesn't mean that issue X is right and you should be following it. It just means have a closer look. I think we sometimes when we are feeling people, we feel stuff, and I think it's quite important to recognise that maybe our feelings are wrong at times, and we need to not follow them. But we do get feelings for certain things, and they I'd suggest that they're an encouragement for us to actually look harder at something and an issue and find out the truth, whether it's we were right in the first place or whether we're wrong and we need to change our views.
Right. I'd be curious to know from the audience in the future what the verdict is about me out there, about my information rather, about my information. I understand I could be more polite and sweet and I can take a more milquetoast, ineffective, weak approach to this information, or I can just say, look, man, these are the facts. What do you want me to do? I'm just reporting it. Sure, maybe I could report it in a little sweeter, but at this point, I am just so angry and upset that I've been misled, lied to, and that people are spreading falsehood and spreading lies and spreading hatred about it. And yeah, I've seen no reason to venerate Martin Luther. I've seen no reason to venerate John Calvin. They're murderers. They are liars. They are blasphemers. They are theological frauds. They are tyrants. I don't see any particular reason to respect them. They were people that corrupted Christianity and brought death and destruction and suffering and misery and probably led people to hell. I think that's not a good reason to like them a whole lot. So yeah, I mean,
just on that too, I think it's quite important that Martin Luther has created the Lutheran Church. Calvin's created a whole bunch of churches. There's what's it? Some dude Smith created the Mormons, whatever it is. At the end of the day, these places, Islam was created by Muhammad. There's a human head in terms of.
Yeah, they named after their founder. You name the religion after the founder. That's the common theme. It's a very common theme in history.
That sort of stuff people should pick up on and say, "Oh, hang on, this is we got this Mahdi at the moment. He's
that guy, yeah.
Oh yeah, how great is that? But in a sense, is he any different from somebody else who's made some wacko religion? The Jehovah's Witnesses are created by some wacko, and he's kind of, you know what I mean? Like there's whereas with Christ showed who he was first. Muhammad didn't have any miracles.
Yeah,
Christ showed
this guy. He's making the same. He got asked why doesn't he do any miracles, and he gave a wonderful answer and all that. But obviously, I'm seeing games being played here, and he's a Muslim. I mean, come on. We're Christians. We don't accept Islam. I don't see why we should accept Reformation era Christians telling us we need to be more Islamic if we want to be good Christians. I'd say, there's the door. Please leave. To put it politely.
Yeah. These movements have a distinct filter of a certain person, and you could argue that the magisterium is also a filter, and that this is where I'm thinking that you've got to, if you want to be a Protestant, have a think about what you're protesting about, because I think people don't, honestly. People don't think I'm called a Protestant, but why? What are you actually protesting about?
Yeah, I mean, your identity is now a protest. So that's what it's like these. What are you protesting? Why? Do you know why? Do you know what? Has the problem been fixed? Or is your identity now permanently protesting? You'll find anything to protest about. But yeah, we should call it a day here. It's been a couple of hours, and yeah. So what's your time there at home, Dylan?
It's 5 o'clock in the morning, mate. 3 o'clock start.
I must have great content for you to get up to watch it, man. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that what's happening with regards to Islamic polemics and other polemics like this. There's people from all over the world doing it, and you can't help but be. And I'm in the worst place in the world, right? I'm from opposite land to everybody. It's either super early in the morning or super late at night for the majority of people where I live in the world, but it's just the way it is. I did try to get to bed a bit early just in case and things like that some days.
Yeah. So let's call it a night. So no one else came on to discuss this, but you guys were welcome. So thank you. Yeah, so guys, tomorrow I should be on with Usama Dakdok, and then I told Usama a few things about Luther, and of course, he spoke to me a little bit after the Calvin stuff, and he said he was really disturbed. He was actually really disturbed, and he said, Lloyd, I knew there were some things about Calvin, about his theology, that I disagreed with, but he says you could see he was bothered badly, and he was like, man, I didn't know how bad it was. He said, I was not aware. I did not realize. And then I told him a little bit about Luther, and he told me a couple of days later, I couldn't stop thinking about that. It really disturbs me if this is Luther's moral character,
You do have to look at the outputs of people. So like the Muhammad was like this axe-murdering, horrible guy. He butchered everybody, and had thousands of wives and heaps of sex slaves. But that's an output of his personality. Calvin was more than happy to send people to the guillotine, as were the French revolutionaries. There was a joy to that Madame Guillotine did all this stuff. What a fantastic thing. I don't believe I saw any of that crap coming from Christ or the apostles.
100%. I agree. No, it's amazing how many Bible-believing Christians don't seem to know the Bible or don't behave like Jesus. I don't know. It's so weird. But yeah, let's call it a day here. It's been really wonderful speaking with everyone. Thank you for allowing me to get these issues off my chest. These are very emotionally charged issues for me because they make me angry. As I read this stuff, I'm having to spend literally hours a day reading through this stuff and summarizing it and living with this data. And then I'm like, why was no one teaching me this in school? I would have laughed at these people when they introduced this stuff and said, no way am I accepting that. And now you were lied to for whatever reasons, knowingly or unknowingly. And I'm glad to know this because it helps me to validate that this is wrong and that is right. Information is power, and the facts and truth are important.
The facts are important. I think I was trying to get the point. There's a bit of flow of what's going on over time as well, and it's like a differential rather than the actual counting. And both are important. One's not right or wrong. They sort of blend with each other. But I think it's important to, over like 2,000 years of history, to have a feel of what's going on, to see what powers are there in the world.
Yeah, no, look, there's evil in the world. The lie is out there. But yeah, guys, if you take the time, learn the facts, we can find the truth. It's out there, And if it's out there, it's going to be on this show. So yeah, Villain, let's call it a night. So guys, thank you all very much. Okay. Well, God bless, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye.